Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking to our distinguished guest today, Dr. Jan Halpen, about the European scene, the American scene, and as she is the global vice chair of Global Republicans. Okay, Dr. Jan, you were talking about lawsuit that impacts on 8.7 million expats living overseas.
There are 8.7 million overseas Americans, and any person who's not American that's married to an American is impacted by what is called the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act,
right.
FATCA for short. And what most people aren't aware of is that the U.S. and Eritrea, which is a tiny country next to the Sudan, are the only two countries in the world that have citizen-based taxation. And there was a law enacted that what the result has been is it is forcing 77,000 foreign financial institutions to deny financial services to Americans who live overseas. It's closing people's accounts. We have filed a lawsuit to repeal FATCA and also to introduce residence-based taxation like other countries. And where we differ from the Democrats is that they have argued for what is called same country safe harbor, which frankly is very discriminatory because it only allows people who live in a certain country to have a garden variety bank account, so to pay your mortgage, to buy your food. But it does not help them be able to expand businesses. It's cut into American competition. We have one of our plaintiffs who has a brokerage firm in Albania and wanted to open up a branch in Montenegro. Well, the banking system will not give him the financial services to be able to do that. And so we have decided to take on this battle, and it is totally bipartisan. It is for every single American citizen or
was this
anyone.
Introduced by the Obama administration?
It was definitely introduced by the Obama administration, and it was hidden in the 2010 Employment Hire Act. And so the initial propaganda was calling us tax cheats. But if you look at what a lot of the Americans working abroad, what they make, their salary, it doesn't even qualify them for that. But it has also added to their tax bills that people in 2008, 235 people expatriated. At the end of 2014, 3,415. In the last 3 months, over 1,800 Americans have given up their passports. And the divorce rate has gone up because if you're married to an American citizen, it forces you to have to answer to the Internal Revenue Service in America. Well, why should your privacy, your financial services, be impacted by that? The 12.6 million green card holders. We have French citizens living in America, and the French banks are closing their accounts in France because the U.S. government has threatened the sovereignty of these nations and the foreign financial institutions with a penalty of 30%. So for example, if the Bank of Japan is buying oil from Saudi Arabia for a client, but they have not fully disclosed every transaction of every single one of their American clients, then the U.S. will fine them 30% of either their assets in the U.S. or of that transaction. So no one wants to do business with Americans.
So Mr. Obama seems to be getting all the blame for everything, from divorce to taxation.
Well, he does deserve the blame for a few things, like reducing the status and the respect of America abroad, of giving a red line in Syria and then not doing anything about it, and the growth of ISIS. We could give him credit for that. We could give him credit for a few other things that are not so positive.
Well, I would love to, but probably would not like to talk about a lot of other things. But how do you see this election coming up? What are your readings? I mean, I understand that there were about 10 prospective candidates in London some time ago. You had a meeting somewhere?
No.
No?
No.
No, not here.
We've had different candidates
Coming
come
and going.
through before they even declared. But, you know, one of my board members is an executive with Facebook, and her role is to help government officials and governments and heads of state to build up their profile and interact with their constituency via Facebook. And one of the interesting things that has come up with Facebook is the insurgency movement is what is most popular on Facebook. And that is what we have right now. That is why you have the non-establishment candidates who right now are considered ranking in the polls. But
Do
what
you think it's good or bad?
well, you know what? I think any kind of free speech is good. And that is free speech. It is people expressing their opinions and what they want, and hopefully politicians all around the globe will listen to them. I think that what I often tell people is that you need to wait until we have our primaries that begin in February.
Right.
We have the Iowa caucuses, New Hampshire primaries, South Carolina, and then in March we have the Super Tuesdays.
Yeah, on this
Well,
point,
just sorry, let me just finish
Yeah.
that, because it's important for people to understand that right now there are people who are answering questions in the polls that are basically saying who they're leaning to. But when they get to the ballot box, it's very different results. So after February and March, that's when we can really look at who are the candidates that the voters really want.
Yeah, my question was about that, see, because we have a different system of election and politics in this country, see. A lot of people don't understand how, well, probably it's easy to understand how a congressman and a member of the House of Representatives is elected, but how do you elect the president? Because I understand that he has to be elected or get certain number of votes from every state.
Yes.
Could you explain that in brief?
In brief, okay. We have what are called delegates, and those delegates declare that they are representing.
Who are these delegates?
They are people who are very active in politics, and they are a voice of the people. It could be your next door neighbor who could be a delegate. But the way that it works is that when people vote for certain candidates, and it varies from state to state, but there are either states that the winner, who receives the most votes, will get all the delegates from the states, and some states will have, if you vote for Trump, the delegates for Trump, that number. If you vote for Rubio, if you vote for Bush, so those states parcel out their delegates. The bottom line is that at the end of the primary season, there needs to be a certain number of delegates, which is a little bit over 1,000, and that is when they secure the nomination.
Over 1,000.
I believe it's 1148, but don't hold me exactly to that number.
But that's based on the delegates from all the states, 50
yes,
states.
because the popular people are voting for the candidates of their choice, and the delegates represent the popular vote at the convention.
And the man chosen can choose his vice president, running mate.
Yes.
And what happens on the day of election? Like one person from Republicans, one person from Democrat has been nominated. Now, how is the president elected?
Well, how it is elected is that we have an electoral college system. And so there are a certain number of electoral votes that are distributed across the states. And that is also based on the number of representatives they have, whether it's congressional representatives or senators.
But not all the senators will vote and not all the congressmen will vote.
Well, they'll vote as an individual citizen, but because of the electoral votes and the electoral college, there is a certain number needed that will declare the winner. So, for example, Obama achieved 336 electoral votes. When we had the issue with Bush and Gore, the popular vote could be greater for a candidate, but the electoral votes based on the numbers distributed across the states could declare the winner. That is why we have...
But it was the court that decided, isn't it?
Well, the Bush and Gore for the Chads, yes, but it is not the courts that decide. It is our electoral college, and that is why you'll hear us refer to purple states, blue states, and red states. And so we have the swing states that are not definitely Democrat or not definitely Republican, and those swing states basically decide the election.
Yeah, we have certain constituencies here too that decide what's going to happen, that you can see the horizon, what's coming up.
Well, but if we look at the recent election 2015 here, no one, even the polls thought it was neck and neck. No one ever thought we would have a conservative majority here in the UK.
Sure. Yes. It was good news for the Conservatives.
It was.
Very surprising. Well, whatever happened to the Labour Party, but let's hope that it's always better to have a balanced competition, isn't it? I mean, if one party just sweeps across, it's not good for democracy. That's what I feel.
Well, you know what? If that's what the voters want, and that is what is elected, that what they have elected, then I think it is still democracy. Because if in the US, if we have a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate, that is what the voters chose because of the issues that they feel are important, and they feel that that ideology is going to fight for them in the way that they would like to see the country run.
Well, you have one good system, is that somebody who has been a president twice, he cannot be re-elected, see.
Exactly, term limits.
Yes, that's very good, see, because in many countries claiming to follow democracy, they have like, it's sort of ingrained, you see, they're born leaders.
Well, born leaders or born dictators under the guise of a democracy, but in California we voted in term limits, so even our state electorates, they can't continue on indefinitely. I think it probably wouldn't hurt if our Congress and Senate maybe had.
Is this only in California?
California, yes. And the presidency of the United States.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's the end of this segment, and when we come back, we'll definitely have a lot more to talk about the United States and the general business. Okay? Thank you very much for being with us. We'll come back soon. Don't go away.